Former third overall pick Trey Lance was relegated to third-string quarterback in San Francisco on Wednesday. 2 days later, traded to Dallas for a 2024 fourth-round pick. Take you back to 2021 when the 49ers traded up with the Dolphins. And consider this, San Francisco gave up more first-round picks for Trey Lance, 3, than wins they got with him, 2. So Trey Lance headed to Dallas to back up Dak Prescott after being relegated to third string in San Francisco. Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, and we move on from Trey Lance in San Francisco. He suffered a broken ankle in week 2 of last season, was out for the rest of the season after having surgery. Ready to go this year, but clearly the 49ers did not see enough progress out of the former third overall pick. And so they moved on, shipping him to Dallas. And for more, let's welcome in two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, your reaction here. Trey Lance headed to Dallas for a fourth-round pick next year.
Why? Hakeem, I don't like this at all. I mean, I like it for Trey Lance because he instantly, gets an opportunity to be a part of another organization because clearly the San Francisco 49ers they didn't have anything for him in regards to opportunities. So great for him as an individual. But for the Dallas Cowboys, why? Jerry, why? This could become a distraction. And the reason why I say that is because it's safe to say, Hakeem, Dak Prescott is probably one of the more scrutinized quarterbacks in the National Football League. For number one, he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. Some people like to call them America's team. Number two, they're always in the spotlight because of their association within the National Football League and their owner. And they're one of the more publicized professional teams in all of sports. So because of that, everything that Dak Prescott does, especially from the negative, is highlighted a lot more than some of the other quarterbacks in the National Football League. So when you bring in a guy in Trey Lance who clearly hasn't reached anything in regards to the expectations, even though he has not reached anything, Hakeem, he still was a highly invested player in the draft, a top 5 selection. So clearly there is some talent. So the first time that Dak Prescott goes out and have a bad ball game, everybody in the media, what about Trey Lance? It's Trey Lance time. So for me personally, I don't think this is great for Dak Prescott. I think he is the franchise quarterback. With that being said, why bring in a guy who was supposed to be a franchise quarterback for another organization? And not to mention, Cooper Rush did a pretty good job in filling duty when Dak Prescott was injured. I mean, I think Cooper Rush went 4-1 or something like that in that stretch. He played pretty good football, serviceable football, so I felt like they were okay at the backup quarterback position behind Dak Prescott.
But you can understand, though, why Dallas would make the move. They only had to give up a fourth-round pick for a guy that was selected third overall just a couple years ago. And if Dak gets injured, because we've seen Dak get injured multiple times in his career, and he's great, he's a top 10 quarterback in this league, then you move on to a guy that maybe has a chance to resuscitate his career in an offense led by Mike McCarthy that really you don't have to do a ton, right? Hand it to Tony Pollard, send it to CeeDee Lamb. I kind of see why it makes sense for Dallas.
I don't, because you're talking about if Dak Prescott gets hurt. When you look at
you got to have insurance, though, right? Why do we have home insurance? Why do we have car insurance? In case something happens.
Cooper Rush was the ultimate insurance policy for the Cowboys. When Cooper Rush stepped into the lineup, Hakeem, I mean, he played pretty good football.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. You're right.
Yes, he actually played better football than what we saw from Trey Lance in that small sample size before he got injured. So I felt like Cooper Rush was the ultimate guy as the backup, because one thing about Cooper Rush, you're never questioning, can he become the starting quarterback, right, Hakeem? You're never thinking about, if Dak Prescott happens to have a bad game, maybe we should insert Cooper Rush. No, but because of who Trey Lance is and the value pick that he was years ago, those questions will arise. If Dak Prescott has some up and down battles throughout this upcoming year. And for Dak Prescott, I don't think that's fair, because when you look at franchise quarterbacks in the National Football League, guys who we believe should be the starter moving forward, regardless if they have a bad ball game or not, they don't have any high-value guys like that behind them in the backup role. You know what I mean? So I think this it potentially could become a distraction. I understand where you're coming from in regards to the injury. You need to have a reliable backup quarterback. But I felt like Cooper Rush showed us he's a guy that you can count on if something was to happen to Dak Prescott. And quiet as kept, Cooper Rush has played better football than Trey Lance.
Yeah. Well, you remember last year. You remember just last season. What was he, 5-0 as a starter? Right? Am I wrong?
He had one. I think they lost one ball game in that stretch. I think he was like 4-1.
But that's when he came in.
Something like that.
Right, but that's when he came in. But I think when he
and
was
they lost
the
to
starter.
The Eagles.
Right.
The Eagles was the team that beat them with Cooper Rush on the road.
But then as a starter, when I think he was pretty sure he was 5-0. So, yeah, if you're sitting there, you go Cooper Rush, because I feel like I remember last season when Cowboys fans were kind of like, oh, why we need to bring Dak Prescott back when he's ready to go? We got Cooper Rush. So I get it from both sides of it. Like, you bring in a guy to maybe be great, but you already have a great quarterback and you already have a pretty good backup. So I see your side of it as well. To me, it's like the bigger story here. It's a swing and a miss for San Francisco after giving up three first-round picks for this I mean, look who the Cowboys got Micah Parsons. Like, they got a nice package. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out with San Francisco what they went wrong.
That might be another topic of discussion for all of us. We can't allow San Francisco just to get off the hook with these bad decisions they made throughout the draft. Not just with Trey Lance, Solomon Thomas years ago. Think about all the mishandled opportunities that we've seen, but luckily enough for San Francisco, they've been able to win ball games. And because of that, some of the mishaps in regards to draft compensations and things they've done or given to other teams have kind of been swept under the rug. Giving up 3 first-rounders to Miami, I mean, Miami turned that into Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and I think another big-time contributor for their team. And guess what? Trey Lance is now playing for his second organization in less than 5 years. So me personally, San Francisco, clearly John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they've been mismanaging draft picks, but no one is really talking about it because, like I said, they've been able to win ball games, and they need to be thankful for Brock Purdy, because if Brock Purdy didn't do what he did a year ago, who knows what type of seat they potentially could be sitting on right now.
Yeah, the Cowboys will have Micah Parsons and Trey Lance from that draft in 2021 on their roster. Yeah, I mean, this is a situation here where the 49ers, they swung and they missed, right? They thought they were going to hit a home run trading up, getting Trey Lance. What went wrong, do you think? And I know he was injured. He suffered the ankle injury last year. But throughout camp, where do you think the disconnect was? Where do you think he wasn't meeting expectations?
You know what? I don't know exactly how Trey Lance was looking throughout camp, throughout the offseason regimen. But clearly he wasn't looking good at all. And because of that, his leash was extremely short. And they wanted to make a move sooner than later instead of waiting this thing out, when they felt like the top 2 guys on their team at the quarterback position were not named Trey Lance. So that's one thing. But me personally, if you're going to trade 3 first-round picks to move up to get a guy who only had like 11 starts, not in Power 5 football, not in Group of 5 football, you're taking more than a risk. It's more than a gamble. Like 11 starts, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the number of starts he had while playing college football and playing on a level where it wasn't considered to be extremely competitive at the most important position. So we knew this was kind of a project, to say the least, but they wanted to roll the dice and try to see if they can create something out of Trey Lance, basically because of his athleticism. And that's what I just mentioned. Like San Francisco, I mean, they kind of getting off the hook in regards to criticism and really being talked about as a team that has mismanaged draft picks. But this was an ultimate miss. This might be one of the bigger misses that we've seen over a decade or so in regards to teams moving up to acquire a guy. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky had more experience on a higher level at North Carolina than Trey Lance. And we all felt the same way about Trubisky when Chicago did what they did with San Francisco. San Francisco did great business for them with Chicago. And guess what? A few years later, they ended up becoming the Chicago Bears, but worse, based on what they did to get up to go get Trey Lance and all the picks they gave away.
Let's consider this too right now, right? All right, so before the trade, they had Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant in 2022, right? Last pick in the draft. Sam Darnold was 3rd overall in 2018. Trey Lance, 3rd overall in 2021. It's the guy, it's Mr. Irrelevant, that's starting the season. Is there a problem with the talent evaluation in San Francisco? Because they had Jimmy G, they let him walk. And maybe they didn't want to pay him the money because they had Trey Lance and they were ready to go into the new era. But is there a problem here with Mike Shanahan? Is there a problem here with the evaluation that we need to be concerned about? Because San Francisco, for all accounts here, is a Super Bowl contender. I mean, this is a good football team.
It's a great football team, one of the best in the NFC as we see it today. But there is a problem in regards to first-rounders and how they value first-round picks, especially at the quarterback position. I, for one, felt like it didn't really make sense to go up to trade for Trey Lance when you still had Jimmy Garoppolo, and the only concern you had was injuries. I felt like trading up for Trey Lance didn't really make sense because Jimmy G, when healthy, especially in the 49ers uniform, they won ball games. I understand people say, well, you can't win a championship with Jimmy Garoppolo. Heck, they say that about Joe Flacco at one point in time as well. And guess what? He hit his stride. He delivered. So because you felt like Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't a household name or one of the bigger arms in the National Football League, you wanted to go out and try to go get the newest hot thing or create the newest hot thing. You were gambling and you didn't have no reason to gamble. You were playing with house money and you wanted to put all your chips in the middle of the table when you were already up, basically based on the success they had with Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's not just about talent evaluation, Hakeem. I think it's just more about not knowing when to take your foot off the gas and putting your foot on the gas too much.
Yeah. Yep. Good analysis there. And Trey Lance is headed to Dallas for a 2024 4th-round pick after being relegated to 3rd-string quarterback this week in San Francisco. A couple days later, traded to Dallas. B-Mac, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Trey Lance didn't work out in San Francisco. Just sometimes that happens. We follow all these players and draft picks, and sometimes they just don't work out. They go somewhere else, and they start anew, and they start fresh. And sometimes they're busts. Sometimes they're not. Look at Geno Smith. We were ready to write him off, and he was comeback player of the year last year for the Seahawks. Trey Lance has that opportunity. Dak Prescott goes down. He's thrust into the spotlight. Of course, he'll have competition with Cooper Rush, but he's got a chance here in Dallas, fully healthy, fully ready to make a change, headed to play for the Cowboys. Will back up Dak Prescott. Much more ahead here on CBS Sports HQ.